And we are back and live and streaming. We are here for today's N10-008 Network Plus study group. This is, welcome back, everybody. Let's see how this goes. We'll see how things work out. Hello, chat room. Hello, everyone. Thanks for not only being here, but being here again. Those of you that weren't here yesterday know the struggles that we went through with our internet connectivity. But today, where is the wood? Everything appears to be running much better. So thanks for heading back here. Thanks for joining us again. Thanks for stopping by. We've got so much to go through. I've got a lot of things on my side. You only saw a little bit of it yesterday, so we'll see how well it goes. So nice to at least get some of those things going. Oh, well, we got lots of folks in the chat room already. For some reason, people are talking about football. I have no idea. Is that a thing? Are we doing something with football? I am a little bit out of the whole news of what's going on in sports right now. It's been a little crazy. Hello, Colorado. Florida's checking in. That was quick. Iowa is here twice. How can Iowa be twice, like right in a row? Toronto, the Canadians are here. I'll let Mrs. Professor Messer know. We got folks checking in from Denver and checking in from Houston. Lots going on. I guess it is time for playoffs, isn't it? I haven't really kept up, to be honest. I just have no time. I have zero time to spend doing anything sports related these days. I'm not really sure when the last time is I watched an entire sporting event from beginning to end. Hello, Oklahoma and Arizona and Dallas and Queens, New York. Thanks for being here. Zimbabwe is here. South Africa checking in. Thanks for being here. Hello, Baltimore and Lafayette, depending on where you're from. Virginia's here. Northern Ireland, welcome. Ethiopia. Mexico is here. Michigan. That's it's going to be a little PTSD on the whole lagging, network connection not working. I'm going to be peeking over for a lot today to see how things are running. I literally had my MTR running the last time it came back up, and I told everybody, go away, we'll do this tomorrow. And I just kept it up and running, and it was solid for hours. Like no packet loss at all, 4 hours. So it's just about, I blame it on time zones, and I blame it on daylight saving time, and it's really the problem is the ISP. Hello, Arkansas and East Africa and Brazil and Huntsville, Alabama. Welcome. Nigeria is checking in. Hello, Italy. Welcome. Or Italy from the UK. So you're from Italy, but in the UK. Well, anyway, over there doing that piece of it. Hello, Jamaica. Well, I am in Florida. I'm based in Florida. So whatever's happening sports-wise that deals with a team from Florida, I kind of have to go with that one. And I think I've mentioned before, I had family members who worked for the Dolphin organization. They no longer work there, but they were nice enough to let us come to some of the Christmas parties, and we got interesting seats. We got to sit in like the corner press box for games, which not a great view, but fantastic facility. You're up in the press box, and you have a desk in front of you, and it's kind of nice being able to do that. That's a pretty nice experience. To be in there. So but that was a long time ago. That was back in the Dan Marino days. So I haven't been down there to watch a game in quite some time. But here we are today. I am adjusting things here so I can see my cache numbers as they are creeping up and down. Right now they're solid. Very happy. This is the number for those of you wondering what we're talking about. These two numbers that are on my screen. This is my streaming device. It is a Blackmagic. What is the technical? I don't want to get this wrong. A Blackmagic Web Presenter 4K. And that's what we have here. So it is processing the video and sending one video stream out to YouTube. YouTube crunches that video and sends it to all of you. So you're not seeing what I'm sending out. You're seeing what YouTube is sending to you. The numbers that are on here, the data rate is the one on the left side, 5.94 megabits per second. So I'm using about 6 megabits per second upstream to send this video signal to YouTube. which is on this particular connection, I think I have about a 25 megabit cap, so we're fine there. That's a fine number, and I've got it at a high rate so that when YouTube does their crunching of things, that it will at least look as good as it can to you. This second number is a cache number. You can almost read where it says cache just above the 3%. So it's taking the video signal, it's processing it, and sending it out. And the amount of memory space in that device to be able to maintain the video, it's using about 3% of that memory and then sending it out. So as long as it's sending the data out, it is, of course, going to be at about 3%. So as information's coming in, it's sending it out. It's doing it as fast as it can. And at the particular configuration settings I have for the video, that's using about 3% of memory. Now, what happens if it can't send any data? Well, then it stores it up and the cache gets more and more utilized. So if I ever have network problems, that cache number begins going lower, or increasing rather. The line goes lower, but the cache, it begins to be eaten up. It begins used up because nowhere to send this data because we're waiting for YouTube or connectivity to YouTube to come back. So anytime that goes to about 3%, that's what that is. There's not really a 30-second delay on this. It's more of about a 10-second delay, but there's always a delay. There's always going to be a delay because I'm sending video to YouTube. YouTube is transmitting that video to you. So they're crunching the video up. They're putting it into different types of video streams. So if you're on a mobile device, you'll get a lower bandwidth than if you're on a desktop system and you've selected 1080p. Then you get the maximum amount. But they're crunching up all of these different streams and sending them all out. So there's a little bit of a delay. Now, the configurations that I've set have about a 10-second delay breakdown on that. But it is, if I was to set this to 4K, for example, the delays are much longer. It goes to about 30 seconds on a 4K resolution because there's much more data. There's 4 times the amount of video that now has to be recoded and sent back out in those different streams. So there's your very long, involved reason that says 3%. So as long as it's 3%, we're fine. That is the good number. It should be a green 3%. It should be colored, but it isn't. I'm sorry, I keep banging my microphone today as I'm going through this. We got about 2 minutes before we get started. I guess I really should get things going on this side. Let's get a green light. That looks good. We got lots on here to work through. Okay. I've got recordings going. You see the Cylons are going down here, so that's good. This is actually sending a video signal to YouTube, so that's my backup, as good as that can be. We all know what happens with video signals being sent to YouTube, though, so we'll see. We'll see what happens. Yes, this first question, I was thinking about, should I change it? Should I make it? No, I should not change it. This will be an interesting measurement to see how we do with our rewind question for the third time. Because you saw it once in December, you saw it yesterday, you're going to see it again today. And we're going to see how we do with it today. Should be interesting. What else we got going on here? I think we're in good shape. We got about a minute. I really need to check. Today is the exact opposite of yesterday. So everything seems to be operating as we would expect, which is what I like. We need to now, let's get rid of this. Let's move chat room. I'm going to move you over to the other screen. Hang on, everybody. Whoop, here we go. Whoop, didn't go far enough. There's the chat, and it needs to be over here. I need to bring up the questions. There they are, along with the Chrome. There it is. Okay. It looks like we're in pretty good shape for a live stream. Are we going to be able to do this today? I think we are. Hopefully, everybody, you're back, you're logged in, you're ready to go. We can go all the way through the first hour here with Q&A. I can't tell you how much I'm looking forward to the after show because that means we made it through the first hour. So we're going to see how that goes. Let's get started, everyone. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the January 2023 Professor Messer N10-008 Network Plus study group. Thanks for being here. This is the study group. We're in this first hour. I ask you questions that come directly from the CompTIA exam objectives. And in the second hour, I provide you with a way that you can ask me questions. So there's a little bit of question and answer going on during this first hour. We'll want you to ask questions. All of this comes directly from the CompTIA exam objectives, and it's a great way for us to take some of these topics and really grind through them to see how well we understand these technologies. If you are here live, we would love it if you were able to join along with us. That means that you can pop open a new browser window, and in that new browser window, simply visit this URL, professormesser.com/QA. There's a question waiting for you. It'll be interesting to see how we do with this question today. If you would like to use an app instead, and why wouldn't you? There's a Socrative student app that you can download from your favorite app store. It, however, will ask you for a room name. That room name is Professor Messer, all one word, PROFESSORMESSER. Make sure you spell it right, or you won't find that there's any question waiting for you when you go to that room. The question that we have for you to start things off, to make sure that you're able to get into Socrative, you're able to answer the questions, and to get the feel for what we're doing, is a question that we did last month. Now, all the other questions we'll do today will be brand new, but I'd like to give what I call our rewind question that we had last month. This question asks, a router is configured with multiple routes to a destination subnet. Which of the following would determine which route has priority? Would it be administrative distance, traffic shaping, next hop, default route, or network utilization? Now, if you think you know the answer, our standing rule is that we answer using the link that's on your screen, professormesser.com/QA. Please don't put any answers in the chat room. Please don't put any hints into the chat room. Instead, we're going to go through this entire process online, see how you're able to answer it. We'll lock in those answers, and later on, we're going to come back to this question and see how well we actually did. Well, thanks for being here. We're able to do these live streams thanks to your ongoing support, and we do have a live stream for A+, Network Plus, and Security Plus every month. If you'd like to know when the next one is going to be, you can check our calendar on the website. We also have videos and daily pop quiz questions for A+, weekly pop quiz questions for Network Plus and Security Plus. You can find our videos at professormesser.com/YouTube. And of course, haven't you subscribed already? You certainly should. That would be pretty good. And then on Twitter and Instagram, you'll get our weekly pop quiz questions. The Twitter is just a simple question. You can link through to the answer. On Instagram, you get your question and answer with a pretty picture. So that works out well too. This is a great way to keep up with what's going on, especially when we're not doing one of these live streams. Today, we're going to be talking about topics associated with the N10-008. That is an exam version that is specific to Network Plus. This was an exam released on September the 15th of 2021, which means we estimate the retirement for this exam to be somewhere around March of 2025. It could be a little before, a little after. We're just not sure, but we'll know more once we get to 2025. So we'll figure out what happens there. We'll have to wait. But if you are here in 2023, you can see you have plenty of time to study for your exam. You're using the exact type of materials that you should, as long as they are marked N10-008. It's a single exam that you have to pass. It's 90 minutes long. You get a maximum of 90 questions. You might get fewer than 90, but 90 is the max that they will ask. And the score you're hoping for to pass is a 720 or better on a scale from 100 to 900. The exam itself is both multiple choice-based questions and performance-based questions. And later on, we're going to do a performance-based question. If you don't have any idea about N10-008 or what topics are on the exam or what you should be studying for, then you should follow this link at the bottom of your screen. Go to professormesser.com/objectives and link over to the CompTIA website to be able to download the latest set of objectives. Also on my website, not only do we have every single video available for you to watch for free online, but a number of you would like an offline version of these videos. You might want some course notes and other study materials. You can find all of that on our site at professormesser.com/netsuccess. It's a great way to not only have all of these study materials in one place, but another great way to help support what we do on the website. Also let you know that I have a video replay of this available on my site. And you can, of course, go to professormesser.com/podcast to get an audio-only version of the replay, something that you can hook up with your podcast listening program, connect those two things together, and that way it can automatically download all of the audio from our study groups whenever we're working through this. You'll find those at professormesser.com/podcast. There's also a video replay available immediately afterwards on YouTube. You can find that video replay and all of the associated chapter markers on that video replay about a day later. So my marketing manager, Lori, who's watching this, hi, Lori. I talk to her all the time, but I somehow feel I have to say hello on the live stream because she's watching the replay, probably at 2x speed, and making a note of the timestamps and putting them all into the YouTube video description. So this is a great place to go if you're looking for where's the question, where's the answer, where was that thing the person talked about in the after show? And all of that is detailed in the YouTube video description. You can go out and look at years of those available for all of our study groups. There's also a chat available. We're not here doing a live stream. You'll find me on Discord. We have our own Discord server. You can visit that by going to professormesser.com/Discord. It is an open server with open invitations. By using that link, you can easily add yourself to our Discord at professormesser.com/Discord. Usually there's a bunch of folks in there. We're all studying. There's some folks studying A+ and Network Plus and Security Plus and even some other things as well. There's voice channels. There's great places to Q&A, and you can send me a direct message there if there's something specific that you might need. Eventually, though, you're going to need to take your exam. And you can, of course, go to the CompTIA website and pay full price to take your exam, or you can save a little money by buying a voucher on professormesser.com/vouchers. This is a place that has all of our vouchers already discounted. So instead of paying that full price on the CompTIA website, you just visit professormesser.com/vouchers. You don't need a coupon code. You don't need an extension in your browser. You don't need to do anything. They are already discounted. So make sure you go to professormesser.com/vouchers. Not only do you get the voucher, but since you're on my site and you're buying the voucher, I'd like to give you also something else for free that you can't get anywhere else, and that's my ebook on the CompTIA exam hacks. I've taken all my hints, my tips, my tricks throughout the years on how to study and how to take these exams and put it into one single set of life hacks, but they're for an exam. So hopefully this might get you a few extra points on your exam because I go through a number of different strategies that you can use while the exam is underway to perhaps get yourself a few extra points. And sometimes that's the difference between passing and failing. Find out more about that. Go to professormesser.com/vouchers. Okay, back to the question that we asked earlier, which is a router is configured with multiple routes to a destination subnet. Which of the following would determine which route has priority? Would it be administrative distance, traffic shaping, next hop, default route, or network utilization? I'm a little on edge. I'm not sure what we're going to choose on this one. 49% of us who in the chat picked 49% say administrative distance. It just went to 50% say administrative distance. 25% say it's default route. 11% say network utilization. 9% say next hop. And 5% say traffic shaping. This is an ongoing challenge. If you are someone who has been working on router administration, or maybe you manage a series of routers, then you know there could be times where the route to a remote location could go through one of two or more different connections. Well, then how does the router determine which one of those connections it should use if both of those would eventually get you to the same place? The primary method of doing this is through a technology called, let me bring this up, administrative distances. So the administrative distances allow your router to effectively prioritize which route is the better route. And of course, better is an absolutely interesting set of circumstances and scenarios that you would have to think about, because different routing protocols use different methods to determine what might be better or what might be worse. So what the router does is decide if you are directly connected, it is a local connection, then your administrative distance is 0. 0 is the best administrative distance you could possibly have. That means that's the one we're going to use because it is directly connected. If you're plugging in a static route, that's something you manually went in and added the route. You have a route or an administrative distance of 1. So a directly connected link has a higher priority than you telling the router what route it should go. And that does make sense in the world of routing, I assure you. And then you can see the administrative distance for other routing protocols like EIGRP, OSPF, RIP v1, RIP v2, default route, and then unknown is a 255. So that's a very good example of understanding how the router determines what a better route might be based on all of these different criteria and how it ranks them numerically. You can, of course, change these administrative distances. You can change the priorities within them. This happens to be the default, and most people, I think almost everybody, keeps the default. I haven't seen an instant yet where somebody decided to change some of these numbers because we're so accustomed to these administrative distances and how they work. But you at least have a perspective of what this might be. The administrative distances is what we were looking for, and indeed 53%. What a good number. What a strong number we had for answer A, administrative distance. 23% of you chose default route. Default route, as you can see from, if you're using DHCP, has an administrative distance of 254. But in this case, default route just is a generic default route. And in the world of routing, we determine what the next hop is based on the routing table within the router, not a default route within the router, especially when there are multiple routes to a destination subnet. The default route is not what we're looking at. We are instead looking at administrative distances. We also have 10% of you say network utilization. Now, in this case, network utilization doesn't have anything to do with what route we're going to go out unless the routing protocol you happen to be using interprets the administrative distance as something that it can use as a metric, which is not very common, but it does exist. We have next hop. 9% of you say next hop. And the next hop is what we would use to get to that distance, but it doesn't help us determine which one of those multiple redundant links to be able to choose from. And lastly, traffic shaping, which allows us to determine how traffic might move across the network, does not help us understand what route a particular traffic should take. Therefore, the 5% of you that chose traffic shaping, unfortunately, did not get this one right. The correct answer is administrative distance, answer A, and 54% of you did an excellent job at finding that. Congratulations. Well, that is our rewind question of the month. I think we did pretty well. We certainly did better than we did last month, or perhaps even yesterday. So that's a good sign. That means we're finally understanding this particular topic, and maybe we can now use that whenever we sit down for the exam. Before we do our performance-based question, I want to thank Rockstar CA in the chat room. CA being the Canadians, we've got $10 super chat. Rockstar says, just stopping by to say, I passed my A+ solely thanks to your content and practice exams. You my goat. I think that's how it's supposed to be said. Getting on Network Plus soon. Not yet, since I need a break. I feel that, but soon. Thanks again. And thank you for your $10 super chat. We sure appreciate the support that you give the channel and the things that we do here. It does help keep the lights on and gives me a little more motivation to keep things going. Eric in the chat room with the $10 super chat as well, who says, just dropped in to send a like and say, I passed my Network Plus exam yesterday, due in no small part to Professor Messer's playlists. Thank you so much for helping my career change. I'm really interested in this, Eric. So first, congratulations on your Network Plus. Congratulations on passing that exam. And I'm more interested in your career change and where you're coming from and where you're going to. I think a lot of people that stop into my website, that are on these live streams, that come to our Discord, have a lot of questions all the time about moving from one type of industry into information technology. I think that is something that also helps a lot of folks when they're really trying to make a decision on what they should do with their career. This is no small decision to make. So this is This is something I think a lot of us would like to pick the brains of the folks that are going through this to see if what we think the process is really matches what you're seeing with the process. So that's another one to think about. So thank you, Eric, for the $10 super chat. We will absolutely keep things going here, and best of luck with that career change and anything that you plan on doing in the future. Let's now shift gears a bit. I have for you a performance-based question of the month. This performance-based question is one that is not multiple choice. You will get a handful of performance-based questions at the beginning of your Network Plus exam, so be ready for those. Don't be thrown off that the first questions you get have nothing to do with multiple choice and things that you might expect to see. Instead, these questions will be matching questions. Maybe you have to put things in a particular order. It might be drag and drop. There's a lot of different ways to ask questions, but all of the questions come directly from the exam objectives. So that's something to keep in mind as well. The question I have for you today is a fill in the blank. And some of you, this may look slightly familiar. This fill-in-the-blank question is on the OSI model. I would like you to specify the OSI layer. And I have for you 5 different scenarios on what you can fill in for OSI layers. At what layer are these different activities operating at? So, for example, A is a user encrypts and digitally signs an email. What OSI layer is really working for that particular scenario? Second on our list is a technician cleans a fiber optic connector. That's something you commonly have to do with fiber optic connectors before you plug them in. It's very common to take some denatured alcohol and clean that off and plug it in, just to make sure there's nothing on there that would cause the signal not to come through. So what OSI layer are we operating at? Question C is, a server has reserved the IP address of 192.168.11.225. What OSI layer is operating for that? Fourth on our list is a switch administrator is clearing the address table. That should be an interesting one. What OSI layer is there? And then lastly, a web server provides services over TCP 443. What OSI layer is operating in that scenario? So that's what we'd like. I'm not telling you what the different layers are. I'm not giving you something to choose from. This really is a fill in the blank. If you think, for example, these are all OSI layer 100, then you can just type in 100, 100, 100, 100, 100, and you can submit that online at the link you see on your screen, professormesser.com/QA. For those of you listening on the podcast side, again, here's the 5 different scenarios. A user encrypts and digitally signs an email. A technician cleans a fiber optic connector. A server has reserved the IP address of 192.168.11.225. A switch administrator is clearing the address table. And a web server provides services over TCP 443. So lock in what you think the right OSI model should be for each one of these different scenarios. Now, you can stop Googling because this is a relatively new question, one that certainly would not be out on Google because I write all of these questions to be brand new for every single study group. So you instead need to think about the OSI model and how it's presented in the exam objectives and see if you can figure out which layer would fit for each one of these. I suspect a number of you are waiting to see what the answers are before you start filling them in, because I'm watching the entries and people submitting their answers and what those happen to be as they're coming in. So in fact, as I look here, you folks are doing extremely well with these. I'm sort of scanning through these different OSI layers to see what this happens to be. I think overall, folks did very, very well with the ones that have been submitted so far. Let's step through each one of these and see if we can really break down where the operation is and what OSI layer we would be able to work through or able to work with. So let's start with the very first one on our list, which is a user encrypts and digitally signs an email. You may have even done this. You may be in your email client and you may have options on your email client to press a button to digitally sign this email or press a button to encrypt this email, or maybe it happens by default in your email client that it automatically digitally signs or automatically encrypts this email that you're sending out. Well, because this is happening in this particular application and we are interactively telling this device, please digitally sign and encrypt this email, then we can very comfortably put this at the application layer of the OSI model, which is layer 7. Anytime our eyeballs are looking at and interacting with an application, it's probably going to be OSI layer 7 that we're working with. In this case, digitally signing and encrypting an email and making those selections, that definitely puts it very solidly at layer 7 of the OSI model. Next on our list is a technician cleans a fiber optic connector. Fiber optic connector, the very tip of the connector is what we're cleaning there. Folks in the chat room are saying, what, you're cleaning? What? Do you mean you clean like the whole cable? No, just the tip of it. Just make sure there's nothing on that tip when you plug it in so the light's able to easily directly move from the fiber optic into the equipment that we're plugging into. Cleaning that connector is one, especially if you're working through at least trying to figure out where we would work at the OSI model. This is a very good one to consider or think about because we aren't dealing with any packets per se at this level. We're simply plugging in some fiber. Well, because we're simply plugging in the fiber, it's something that we're dealing with at the physical layer, at the layer that allows the signal to move across the network. And if we're working with that signal, then we're working at OSI layer 1, the physical layer. Third on our list is a server has reserved the IP address of 192.168.11.225. Now, from there, that should be all you need to know. As soon as you see an IP address, a subnet mask, a default gateway, or anything else dealing with TCP/IP in general, really just IP in general, and that address is on your screen, or a subnet mask is on your screen, or a route is on your screen, then we're dealing with OSI layer 3, working at the network to be able to understand where traffic may be coming from and where it's going to. That's why we often say that routers operate at OSI layer 3 because they make forwarding decisions based on the destination IP address that's inside of the packet. So layer 3 is a perfect example. If you see an IP address or subnet mask, it's probably going to be layer 3. The next one I made a little bit more difficult. This question says, a switch administrator is clearing the address table. But I didn't tell you what the address table was or what type of addresses were inside of the address table. Instead, you have to work backwards in that particular scenario because it is a switch administrator. And the switch administrator is the one that is managing all aspects of the switch. And if you are familiar with switches, then you know, of course, the switch is going to operate at OSI layer 2, and the table that's inside of a switch is one that designates MAC addresses. And MAC addresses, of course, are devices or a scenario where we're operating at OSI layer 2. Anytime you see a MAC address, it's layer 2. Anytime you see DTE or DCE, especially on WAN links, that's layer 2. So it's the very basic address at the data link level of the OSI model. So whenever we're working with that, it's OSI layer 2. Switch administrator, anything that a switch does is effectively going to be OSI layer 2. Don't talk to me about layer 3 switches because, as we all know, there's no such thing as layer 3 switches. We can talk about that in the after show if you'd like. I say that with a tiny bit of sarcasm. So I know there are things called layer 3 switches, but in reality, there's no such thing as a layer 3 switch. And lastly, option E is a web server provides services over TCP 443. A web server provides services over TCP 443. Now, this is another example of anytime you see a port number, you see a UDP port number or a TCP port number, you should automatically think this is an OSI layer 4 operation. And indeed, that is the answer in this one as well. So there are the OSI layers that we chose for this particular set of scenarios. Let's quickly go through them one more time, where we have a user encrypts and digitally signs an email is layer 7. Technician cleans a fiber optic connector is layer 1. A server has reserved the IP address of 192.168.11.225. That's layer 3. A switch administrator is clearing the address table, that's layer 2, and a web server provides services over TCP 443, that is layer 4. So those are your OSI layers connected to the different scenarios for this month's performance-based question. Now, what's interesting about this question is that you could get some of these right and some of these wrong. So in that scenario, and the question has even come up in the chat room, is do you get partial credit? Well, CompTIA has a frequently asked questions on their website where they have written there that if you have a performance-based question where you have some that could be right and some that could be wrong, we might give you partial credit, or we might not. The frequently asked questions effectively says that. So they say it's possible that you could get some partial credit, but it's also possible that you could not get partial credit. I guess in this scenario, we can hope. We would think that, well, this lends itself to allowing for partial credit. Let's hope that in this particular example that you would be able to get partial credit for a question like this. But of course, CompTIA does reserve the right just to make everything an all or nothing. So you could get all full credit for this question or no credit for this question or somewhere in between. We don't know. The real worry, and I get this question a lot from folks that say, well, how do they grade it? And do you get partial credit? And how many questions should you get right? How many questions should you get wrong? Well, CompTIA doesn't tell us. They don't give us that level of information. And so my recommendation to you is don't worry about it. You'll never know the answer anyway. It's a mystery of the universe that will never be solved. There's somebody in a dark room at CompTIA headquarters who knows the answer, but nobody out here in the world has any idea how they grade these exams. And because of that, you shouldn't dwell on it. You shouldn't worry about it. You shouldn't even concern yourself with the grading. Just worry about understanding everything that's listed in the exam objectives, and you're going to be just fine. As they mentioned in the chat room, yes, we do believe that every question is worth a different number of points anyway, which means you can't even look at it from a percentage perspective because there's no way to do this. And maybe multiple choice-based questions are graded more than performance-based questions, or maybe performance-based questions are graded more than multiple choice. We don't know. It could be that performance-based questions have very little outcome to the final score, or they might have a dramatic outcome. We don't know. We simply have no way to ever know the answer to that. So don't worry about it. Just do the best you can. And I think you'll do just fine whenever we work through these. So of course, you should absolutely be familiar with the OSI model. You should be familiar with what's in the exam objectives, but don't worry so much about how they come up with a final score because you'll never be able to figure it out anyway. Let's now shift gears back to multiple choice-based questions, back to a world we're comfortable with. I have a multiple choice-based question, and it asks, a network technician needs to repair a BICS connection. Which of the following would be required? Which of the following would be required for this task? It's a very good question. So we do have some options available for you, of course. Those options are a punch-down tool, loopback plug, crimper, cable tester, or crossover cable. The question again, a network technician needs to repair a BICS connection. Which of the following would be required for this task? Is it punch-down tool, loopback plug, crimper, cable tester, crossover cable? It's got to be one of these, right? Now, all of these are on the exam objectives. So let's see if you're familiar with what this particular type of connection would require. I'll give you a moment to answer that. In the meantime, in the chat room, some questions have come in. And one of them was, I got my A+ cert thanks to you, Prof. This is from Hello. The question is, what does the CE, Charlie Echo, on the certificate mean? That CE means continuing education. It used to be back in the day, in the 90s, if you earned an A+ certification, that certification was good for life. You may see some people refer to that as a GFL certification, good for life. But there was a big emphasis internationally, especially with the international standards, to create a series of certifications that would require them to be constantly updated. And in the case of technology certifications, that makes perfect sense because technology is always being updated. And so CompTIA decided to be able to comply with those international standards, we needed to have a series of certifications that were no longer good for life, but instead were needed to be updated every 3 years. And the newer version of the A+ that requires this 3-year update is the CE version of the certification, or the continuing education version. Effectively, everything that you see for A+ these days is the CE version. The GFL, the Good for Life versions, are so old that it's not something we even apply or people even look for anymore because it's so outdated. So if you have a CE certification, you have the right one. That's the good one. That's the one you want. Let's see how you do with this one. The question asks, a network technician needs to repair a BIX connection. That's BIX. Which of the following would be required for this task? Is it a punch-down tool, a loopback plug, a crimper, a cable tester, or a crossover cable? Let's see how you answered this one. 48% of you chose A, punch-down tool. 23% of you say crimper is what you would use. 13% of you say a cable tester. And then we have a two-way tie for fourth place between 8% for a loopback plug and 8% for crossover cable. Well, first we have to think about a BIX connector. Have you even heard of such a thing? Well, if you haven't been working in the data center, or you're not someone who's been working with the cable that's brought into an IDF or an MDF, then you've probably seen, or at least worked with some level, a BIX connector. BIX is an abbreviation for Building Industry Cross Connect. Wouldn't that be BIC? Yes, it would. Is that the name? No, it's not. It's BIX, Cross Connect with an X. I guess they were being a little bit cheeky there. Northern Telecom created this, Nortel, back in the day, the 1970s. So you'll see this block certainly in North America, Canada, and even the US. You'll see some of these BIX connectors. This is another style of punch-down block. So if you want to connect a wire into this punch-down block, you're going to need some type of punch-down tool to be able to make that happen. So the real key is knowing what BIX is. Once you know that BIX is this punch-down block, then you can easily decide what tool you would use to connect in these wires. They've got even gigabix, aren't they? Talk about being cheeky. Gigabix, where you can have better than category 6 standard connectors going through the newer version of these BIX connectors. And if you look at them close up, there's a better view of them. It looks very similar to the different type of blocks that you might have, but this one is very specific. You have to have a BIX compliant punch-down tool. Just can't use the same punch-down tool across all of these different systems. You have to make sure your punch-down tool is compatible with the punch-down block that you're trying to connect all these wires into. That BIX connector needs a punch-down tool, and you can see that 50% did choose punch-down tool. Answer A, that is the correct answer. 23% said crimper. Crimper obviously is the type of connector that you would use to put maybe an RJ11 or RJ45 connector onto the end of a category 5, category 6 type cable. So that's certainly something you would need for those patch cables and cables that you would plug into an Ethernet card. But for a BIX connection, you're going to have a punch-down tool. The crimper is not going to do you any good. 13% of you said a cable tester. Maybe that's what you use after you use your punch-down tool to make sure that you punch the wires down in the proper way. But a cable tester itself is not used to connect any wires or do any repairs to a BIX connection. We also have 7% that said loopback plug. A loopback plug is used to test a physical interface on a device. For example, a router, you could send data out interface on the router. The loopback plug will redirect that data directly back into the router, where the router can then examine, am I receiving exactly the same information that I sent? And if I'm not, then we either have a problem with our interface on the router, or we have a problem with our loopback adapter that we're using, which certainly could be possible. And then lastly, crossover cable, which is commonly used to connect like devices at the Ethernet level. There's also crossover cables for other types of media as well. We often think of crossover cable as an Ethernet only, but of course crossover is available for wide area network connections and other types of connections as well. Crossover cable, though, doesn't help us repair anything related to a BIX punch-down block. In this case, the only answer that makes any sense is indeed answer A, punch-down tool. 50% of you got that one absolutely correct. Well, let's now have another question for you. I've got one that we can work through. This is a question that asks, a packet capture has decoded LACP on the network. Which of the following is in use? Is it loop protection, jumbo frames, aggregation, port security, or mirroring? Which one of those is it going to be? See if you know the answer. The question again is, a packet capture has decoded LACP on the network. Which of the following is in use? Is it loop protection, jumbo frames, aggregation, port security, or mirroring? If you think you know the answer, follow that link on your screen. Go to professormesser.com/QA and lock in your answer. A number of you are jumping into this one. I'm watching the numbers go up. So many of you, I think, know what LACP is. If you don't know what it is, do not Google this. So let's see if we can step through and understand what this one happens to be. And you've done some packet captures, right? You've got your Wireshark already loaded on your machine, don't you? You've captured some packets and looked at them in your Wireshark, haven't you? It's all free to do that on your machine. If you haven't downloaded Wireshark, you should do that today. Play around with that. It can't hurt anything. So grab your Wireshark, capture some packets, go look at an ARP today. See what you can find. Find an ARP request and an ARP response. Those are two very common protocols that you'll find on anybody's network, it seems. It'd be very unusual not to find an ARP on a network. But go find what's out there. And you'll find out enough once you start understanding what packets are on your network, what type of data you would expect to see, it becomes a little bit easier to find data that you would not expect to see in your Wireshark. So here, somebody must have used Wireshark because they captured some data. And in this packet capture, they've decoded LACP on the network. Which of the following is in use? Is it loop protection, jumbo frames, aggregation, port security, or mirroring? What did you answer? Let's see. We'll click the button. 57% of you say that's aggregation. Isn't that a kid's game? I think that's something else. 15% of you say port security. 10% say loop protection. And then for another, again, a two-way tie for fourth place. 9% say jumbo frames. 9% say mirroring. So now we have a good number. 57% is a strong number that say LACP has something to do with aggregation. Whenever I talk about aggregation, we're really referring to multiple links in a switch. Here's a good example. So you have two switches. Both of these switches have devices plugged into them on both sides. But you'll notice that the two switches are connected together with 4 separate links. I think we could probably think that is a series of gigabit links. But instead of this being gigabit links that you would only have 1 gigabit between both of those switches, 4 different connections, that means we could have 4 gigabit throughput between these two switches, but we have to configure the switch so that it understands lag or link aggregation. You may also see this referred to as port bonding or some other similar term, depending on the switch manufacturer that you're using. But this is able to tell the switch, use these 4 interfaces as one single logical interface. What's also important about that is you must configure it that way, or else if you look at this picture, you've got a loop. You'd have data going in that loop, in one side, out the other, in one side, out the other, and they just be looping over and over and over again on the switch. You'd break things. But by telling the switch, use these first 4 interfaces for a lag, that is something that would aggregate data and be able to send it to the other side. In fact, if you hear anyone say, oh, that switch needs to have a lag enabled, or those 2 interfaces, that's a lag, you'll know immediately, oh, link aggregation. They're bonding those different connectors together to be able to connect them at a much higher bandwidth. To be able to manage this, you could set this lag up statically so that you manage how many interfaces are active at any particular time, and then you would have to add or remove interfaces automatically from that. But of course, there is a protocol that manages this for you, and that protocol is called Link Aggregation Control Protocol. Since this is link aggregation, this is the control protocol for link aggregation, or the abbreviation LACP. So that's where we got the LACP in this example. And if you see LACP on a protocol decode, that means that somewhere link aggregation is indeed in use. So link aggregation is what we were looking for. Answer C, aggregation, 57% of you got that one absolutely correct. That's what we were looking for. We have other options here. Port security is something that you could enable on a switch. It's commonly used on switches to be able to prevent people from communicating through different interfaces on that switch. You could, for example, limit a particular interface to a particular MAC address. That way someone couldn't come up to an interface that's on your conference room, for example, unplug a device, plug their device in, and now they're on the network. Port security would prevent that from happening. 10% of you said loop protection. Loop protection, very commonly used on a switch with spanning tree protocol, STP. If we had decoded STP on the network, then we could have said loop protection. But we didn't get STP, we got LACP. So that's what was happening there. We have 10% that say mirroring. Mirroring is when you take any one of those interfaces and you take a copy of that data and send it to another interface on the switch. This goes back to the idea of capturing packets, where you could plug in a physical protocol analyzer and simply take a copy of that data and send it down to the protocol analyzer without having to break any connections or disconnect any of the devices that are on your network. But whenever you mirror data, there's no specific protocol associated with that, and LACP has nothing to do with mirroring data. And lastly, jumbo frames, which are certainly valuable on switches where you need to transfer a lot of data over this particular switched connection. It allows you to have frames that are much larger than the normal 1,500 bytes. You can go up to just over 9,000 bytes in a single frame. But you have to enable jumbo frames on your switch, and all of your devices that are connecting through those jumbo frames have to be able to recognize that the jumbo frames are in use. But LACP has nothing to do with jumbo frames. That's a switch configuration setting. You commonly don't know that jumbo frames are in use unless you happen to capture a frame that's very, very large, and you can say to yourself, well, obviously they must be using jumbo frames on this network. If you see LACP, the link aggregation control protocol, then you're seeing aggregation, or there's some type of link aggregation occurring on the network. Lag was the answer. 57% of you got that one absolutely correct. Well done. Yes, you can tell I've done quite a bit of link aggregation, spanning tree. I've used all of these technologies in things that I've done throughout the years. So these are things you should absolutely know about as well if you plan on getting into any level of networking. Well, already we've talked about so many different topics. We've talked about switches. We talked about the OSI model. We've discussed a lot of scenarios with networking. And indeed, the Network Plus exam goes into a lot of different topics. If you look at the exam itself, the Network Plus course that I created is 93 videos in length, over 14 hours of content. There's a lot of information in these videos, and not everyone has time to go through every single video and be able to look through it. That's why I created my course notes. These course notes are a list of everything that are in all of my videos, all of the important graphics, all of the important text. It's all here. Not only do I have physical versions of this book that you can get, I also have digital versions of this book that you can get. Let me bring up the digital version right here. There it is. This is a PDF, which means you could put it on practically any one of your devices. In fact, you should put them on all of your devices. Put it on your phone, put it on your tablet, put it on your laptop. Wherever you happen to be, you'd be able to work with all of these course notes. And you can see in the course notes, it's all in here. Port numbers, diagrams, information on images, cables, wiring, it's here. So anything that's in your exam objectives is in the course notes. Obviously, they don't replace the idea of watching videos or reading your book, but they are a great consolidated view of everything you need to know before you walk into that exam. I have both digital and physical versions available on my site. And if you purchase the physical version, like I'm holding here, then you will get the digital version for free. So you can look through the digital version while you're waiting on the physical version to arrive. Lot to do with the course notes. It's also a great way to support what we do here on Messer Studios and the Professor Messer website. Feel free to have a look at professormesser.com/NPCN, or you can click the top of the screen, and I just added to the website a Start Here or Getting Started section where I put everything related to Network Plus on a single page. So if you're looking for course notes, you can go to Start Here. If you're looking for the videos, go to Start Here. If you're looking for all of the replays of the study groups, are all on one page now. So I've tried to make it a little bit easier to find the things you're looking for. That's on the Professor Messer website. Click the Getting Started or Start Here links that are on the page, and you'll be able to find all of those and use those as something you want to work through. So those are my course notes, hopefully something that might help you with your studies as well. Let's do some more questions. I've got another question for you. Let's see what's next on our list. Since we're talking about crazy abbreviations, this abbreviation asks, which of the following would most commonly be associated with an MDF? There were a lot of problems with this question. We're going to do this live, everybody. Which of the following would be most commonly associated with an MDF? I couldn't help it. And for those of you that you're blinking kind of funny because you noticed there was an extra space here, I'm with you. There you go. It's live. We're real time. We can make that happen. I can't change the one online, but now you can see this one. So this question again asks, which of the following would be most commonly associated with an MDF? Would it be color laser printer, LCD projector, access point, docking station, or core internet router? Which of the following would be most commonly associated with an MDF? Is it color laser printer, LCD projector, access point, docking station, or core internet router? Have to figure out what these happen to be. Hopefully you know what an MDF is. If you don't, maybe you can just take a guess and figure out what it happens to be. We can step through this. If you are working in any sized environment, you probably have an MDF. That's the only hint I'm going to give you, which isn't really a hint, is it? Doesn't really help you very much. But if you do and you know what that is, this should be a relatively easy question. Of course, that's the problem with questions on the exam. If you know the content, yeah, they are kind of easy. If you don't know the content, it's a trick question. That's what I've come to realize. It's not really that tricky. It's really straightforward, but you have to know what these terms are. And that's why I always tell people, don't worry about things that go outside the scope of the exam objectives. If you know everything in the exam objectives, you're going to pass this exam. There's just no question. How can you not if you know everything that's on these exam objectives? And in fact, all of these things, especially as they associate with an MDF, are indeed on the exam objectives. Make sure you're familiar with this. We have a number of you that are locking in your answers now. Stop Googling MDF. No, can't do that. No. I'm pointing my finger at you. No. So that is it. See if you can remember or think about what this would be. Now, I will say there might be scenarios where more than one answer could possibly be correct. And people will send me emails afterwards saying, wait, there were 4 or 5 things that could be right in that question. Well, there could be, except the question asks, which would be most commonly associated with an MDF, and that changes the answer. Because even though more than one of these could be associated with an MDF, the question is asking you which one is the most common association with an MDF, and that's really the most important part of this, is really understanding what it might be. Let's see how you did with this one. Again, being associated with an MDF, would it be a color laser printer, an LCD projector, an access point, a docking station, or a core internet router? And let's see how you answered this one. Again, we've got these sort of middle-of-the-road numbers. 53% of you say core internet router. But we have very solid answer 2 and 3 here. We've got access point at 22%. We've got effectively a two-way tie for third place between a color laser printer at 14% and a docking station at 10%. And then lastly, an LCD projector, a mere 2% of the list. Well, it would be nice to know what an MDF is. Commonly, an MDF is, we almost never call it what it is, which is a main distribution frame, which doesn't even make sense. A main distribution frame. But that's what the term is. That's what the abbreviation is. What this really is your central data facility in a building. So very commonly you have one room, usually it's on the bottom floor, where all of your network kind of goes into one single place. If you have connections from a wide area network provider, they're brought into this room. If you have connections to other floors of the building, they start in this room. If you have infrastructure equipment that helps support all of these devices with routers and switches, they're probably in your MDF. So this is usually your data center is the MDF that we have here. The other things that you might find in an MDF are test points for the wide area network. So if somebody's having a problem, they're doing a loop back, they're probably looping back from your MDF. And very often you may just call this the data center. There may be nobody in your environment that even calls it an MDF, but because there are these other areas on different floors of your building where you are connecting to users, those are your intermediate distribution frames, or IDFs. So very commonly we have one MDF that is connecting to multiple IDFs, usually on different floors of a building or within different buildings. So here's a better picture for those of you wondering, what is in this room? They have all kinds of stuff in this room. Lots of punch down blocks of different types. Are they Bix blocks? I don't know if they're Bix blocks or not. It's kind of hard to see. It looks like a different style of block on the front, and we can't see the back end of it to see what's connected to the other side, but this is something very similar to that. A lot of test points, a lot of people connecting in and plugging in different equipment, and somebody's done a fine wiring job of it's just everywhere. This is definitely seems to be, I wouldn't say this is an older MDF. This could be an MDF that is incredibly modern. But when we're only looking at a small corner of this particular MDF, there's probably racks that are over in the other part of the room. We've got a lot of other pieces in the other part of the room, but this is where you would plug in connections from your wide area network providers. And this is where, for example, your internet connection might be, which of course means that you would have a core internet router in the room as well to be able to support those configurations. This core internet router, 53% of you chose that option. That is the right answer. That's what you would most commonly find in an MDF when you compare the other options that were on this page. And let's compare those other options. 21% said an access point. Access points, of course, are used as wireless connectivity on your network. Well, when you're inside of an MDF, you generally don't necessarily need wireless connectivity. You're usually plugging into a console port or plugging in directly to the network that you're working with. And in fact, if you're troubleshooting something in the MDF, you don't want to be on the wireless network. That's just going to add complexity to the entire problem. You'll never know, is the wireless network what's causing our problem? Let's plug in directly to the device to troubleshoot. And that's why access point would probably not be the very first thing on this list of what we would find inside of an MDF. 14% of you said a laser printer, a color laser printer on top of that. I had to make it a fancy one. The color laser printer behind the doors of an MDF will not help anyone because usually a very small number of people would have access to an MDF. And in many environments, in many companies and organizations, no one's allowed in the MDF because the second someone steps in the room, they might change something. And one way to make sure that nobody touches anything in the room is to make sure that no one can go in there. So they very tightly control access to that room. You would not put a laser printer in there because no one would be able to pick up their laser printer output. Under 21% access point, 14 laser printer, 10% say a docking station, same problem. Docking station is where we would plug our laptop in to be able to connect it to peripherals. Well, if I can't get in the room or I have limited access to that room, that's not somewhere I would be plugging in a laptop with a docking station. So that's not what we would use either. And then lastly, 2% of you say LCD projector. LCD projectors are commonly in conference rooms along with your access points, and sometimes docking stations on people's desktops. Color laser printers might be on the floor of a building where the users are, but none of those would be commonly associated with an MDF. But as I said, you might have an MDF that's got a printer inside of it for another different kind of reason. You might have an access point in your MDF, and those are certainly technologies that you might find anywhere in your environment, but that wasn't the question. The question said, which of the following, these 5 options, would be most commonly associated with an MDF? And although a color laser printer could be in an MDF, a core internet router is almost always in an MDF. So that's your key. In fact, you'll have a number of questions on your exam that ask you for the best of these available options or the most likely of these available options. And this is really a good example of a question that could come up on your exam where multiple answers could possibly be correct, except for that word most. And that changes everything. You have to pick the one that makes the most sense for all of this. So for those of you that haven't call it an MDF or an IDF, you're old school. We like you. But for those of you that call it the data center and the access room upstairs, that's perfectly reasonable too. No reason to change your nomenclature. Just keep calling it what you call it. Call it the data center. Call it the main data room. Call it the central data facility. Call it whatever you'd like. But when you're talking to other networking professionals and you say, well, that's located in the MDF, let's go down there, everyone knows exactly what you're talking about when you do that. It's another example of making sure you know what those different technologies are and how they fit into the rest of the world. If you're watching this video for continuing education unit credit, then I would recommend you follow these instructions if you would like to receive an email from me. In fact, you have to follow these instructions to receive an email from me with a digitally signed certification saying that you must have been here for this event. What you want to do is go to the top or the bottom of the Professor Messer website. And in that top or bottom, you'll see a link for Contact Us, which is really Contact Me. That Contact Us link will bring up a form. Put in your name, your email address. In the subject line, please put January 2023 Network Plus Study Group or something similar to that. And then in the body of the message, on a line by itself with no other text, so it's the only thing on the line, put the super secret code word of the month, docking station. Docking station is the super secret code word of the month. Why did I choose that one? I don't know. It was on the screen. And I didn't want to choose the core internet router. I wanted to choose docking station. That's our super secret code word of the month is docking station. This is, you can, of course, also put anything else into this message that you would like to. I read through every single one of these. I'm not able to comment or respond to all of them necessarily because I get a lot of these every month, but it's a good way to fill me in on what's going on. How's your studying going? Were you able to pass the exam? Are you renewing your certification for a particular reason? I love reading through these. Can you tell? So that's the one. Docking. Some of the 10% of you are very angry with me for choosing that as the, well, that's your, at least maybe you got the question wrong, but now you can get the code word right. It will turn it around for you. We'll get that silver lining. Docking station is your super secret code word. Again, go to the top or the bottom of the Professor Messer website, click Contact Us, put in your name, your email address, put in the January 2023 Network Plus Study Group, and then in the body of the message, put the word docking station. You don't have to put anything else. If that's all you want to put on the message, that's fine. I know what it's for. I'll be glad to send you back your email, and that will ensure that you get a 1-hour webinar category CEU. You can't use my videos to completely renew your certification, but you can use it to work towards renewal of your certification, so that might help you quite a bit. We got time for another question, though. I know it's top of the hour, but we can work another one into this mix. So here's our next question on the list. This question asks, an attacker is attempting to discover a user's password by trying every combination of letters, numbers, and special characters. Which of the following would best describe this technique? Would it be dictionary attack, spoofing, denial of service, brute force, or deauthentication? An attacker is attempting to discover a user's password by trying every combination of letters, numbers, and special characters. Which of the following would best describe this technique? Is it dictionary attack, spoofing, denial of service, brute force, or deauthentication? If you know the answer, go to professormesser.com/QA and lock in your answer. See if you happen to know what it is. Maybe this can step through this. This is obviously a security-related question. There are absolutely security questions on the Network Plus exam, just as there are security questions on the A Plus exam. Really, if you're doing anything in IT, you have a certain level of responsibility to secure the systems that you happen to be using and the systems that you are supporting, and knowing these technologies and these attack types is an important part of that. An attacker is attempting to discover a user's password by trying every combination of letters, numbers, and special characters. Which of the following would best describe this technique? Is it dictionary attack, spoofing, denial of service, brute force, or deauthentication? If you think you know the answer, please know answers in the chat room. You want to go to professormesser.com/QA and lock in your answer. We'll have to figure out what this one might be and where you would fit into the big scheme of things with this question. Can you believe we made it through an hour? We made it, everybody, through an entire hour of the study group. For those of you that were here yesterday, you know that's a pretty big deal. So I'm pretty happy about that right now. Let's see if you know the answer. Lock in this answer. We'll have to figure out what this one happens to be. See if you know what this one is. A lot of you jumped on this one pretty quick. So I'm thinking we're probably going to do pretty good on this one and whatever it happens to be. See if you know this one. Let's see how you did. Since so many people have already locked in their answer, let's see how you did. The question again is, an attacker is attempting to discover user's password by trying every combination of letters, numbers, and special characters. Which of the following would best describe this technique? Is it dictionary attack, spoofing, denial of service, brute force, or deauthentication? What did you choose? Let's find out. 81% say brute force. That is a strong set of answers for the folks answering this one. 14% say dictionary attack is what it would be. And then we quickly go to single digits. 4% say spoofing, 1% say deauthentication, and 0% say denial of service. So these answers, 82% saying brute force, tends to make sense for this particular question, because on a brute force attack, we're not really looking for trying the most common type of passwords. Instead, we're going to step through every possible combination of letters to make this happen. So as you can imagine, this can be extremely time consuming, because when you're trying every single possibility, then you've got to try every character, uppercase and lowercase. You got to try all the numbers. You got to try all the special characters, and then you have to combine those together in every possible different permutation. Normally, we have some type of hash that we're trying to match. So let's say, I don't know, let's say we've broken into LastPass and we've stolen a lot of hashes. I know it's crazy that something like that would happen, but let's just say that happened, and now the attacker has a hash. Now the attacker would like to know your password, but all they have is the hash. So what they're going to do is go through and start looking at every combination of letters and numbers. So they'll start with AAAAA, 5 A's, and they'll look at the hash of 5 A's, and they'll compare that hash to the one that they've stolen, and they can see, not a match, so the password is definitely not AAAAA. Let's do another one, AAAAB. Well, here's the different hash, and if we compare it, nope, not the same hash. We thought we were going somewhere with those first two characters, but indeed, that's not the same hash. That's not the password. And we just keep going through the list. AAAAC, AAAB, D, E, F, and we keep going until we rotate through every possible one of those. And if we've gone through all 5 characters, then we do 6, AAA, AAA, and we start going through that list all the way through these. So eventually, we'll get to the password that we'll happen to try the password, PASSWORD, and you can see the hash for the word password, ding, ding, happens to match the hash that was stolen. Therefore, the password associated with this account is the word password. It took all the way up to going through 8 characters. This could have taken hours, days, weeks, or months to finally get to this point, depending on the type of hashing that's being done and the type of technology you're using to rotate through all of these hashes. This is one that it could be very challenging to find. That's why we always tell you to use passwords that are at least 8 characters long. Even longer would be better, and adding in a special character or a number makes it even more difficult if somebody goes back and tries to do something like a dictionary attack. In this scenario, they would have been better off doing a dictionary attack, wouldn't they? Because password is such an easy common password that people use. It's got to be in the top 100. So if you would try the top 100 passwords, you would have hit on this one very quickly. Instead, the brute force took a lot more time to be able to do something like that. So that's why, if you ever work through this, that is the answer we're looking for. Brute force is what we wanted to do. And indeed, 82% of you chose brute force. You knew that was the right answer. You knew that's what you would use if you were going through every possible scenario. That's the one that you would make happen. At least it would be something you could use to help find this particular password listed on this network. Well, if you're trying to figure out where I got all of this information, the question topics, the answers that are in this study group for today, They all came directly from the CompTIA exam objectives. If you go to professormesser.com/objectives, I gave you a link. They'll take you over to the CompTIA website. There's also a way to find this using your favorite search engine. Just type in CompTIA exam objectives. It'll be the first link that comes up on the screen. This is a valuable document. This will tell you everything you need to know about the exam. I've got the objectives right here. And as I step through this, every bullet that's in this list could be a question on the exam. There's all the port numbers, network architectures, connectivity. Here's the network implementations, Ethernet switching, wireless technologies, operational, standardized documents, policies, procedures, disaster recovery, security, and troubleshooting. There's a lot in this document. I realize it's a big document to work through, but it has everything you need to know. And in fact, what you will find is the exam does not really go outside the scope of the exam objectives. So I would highly recommend you have a look at the objectives. They should be the first thing you download. They should be the last thing you reference before you plan to schedule your exam, because it will tell you if you know everything you need to know. If you can cross out everything in this list, you're ready. It's a great way to do it. Make sure you grab those objectives. Go to professormesser.com/objectives. We do one of these study groups every month. So in February on the 15th, we have another Network Plus study group. We have a Security Plus study group next week on Wednesday. If you want to come back next week at 12 noon Eastern, we'll do a Security Plus study group. And then in February on the 7th and the 9th are the A Plus study groups. 15th is the Network Plus study group. And on the 22nd is the Security Plus study group. That's a great time to come back. And if you're watching this well in the future where none of these dates make any sense, then I highly recommend you check out the calendar. Go to professormesser.com/calendar for the latest dates. You can also, if you're already in our Discord, there is an events channel in the Discord where all of those are updated, so you can simply look at the dates that are in the events channel. In fact, Discord will give you an alert whenever we go live so that you know exactly when that's going to happen. So can you believe we got through an entire hour of Q&A, but we're not done yet. There's the after show where you will ask questions of me. I'll stop asking the questions, and whether the questions are about technology, certifications, IT, or even other topics, I'm more than happy to take them in the after show. We'll take them. I'll explain how we can get those questions plugged in the after show. Just stick around. We'll do that immediately afterwards. Don't forget about our success bundle on the website. Go to professormesser.com/netsuccess. You, of course, can find the Success Bundle there, along with our vouchers and exam hacks at professormesser.com/vouchers. Don't pay full price for your vouchers. Instead, buy the voucher at professormesser.com and get the exam hacks ebook for free. And, of course, you should always, if you haven't already, follow us on YouTube. If you like this video, I would love it if you gave it a thumbs up. This helps me a lot when I'm working with my friends at YouTube, because we're always looking at what people are interested in, and this is a great way to measure or get a barometer of that interest. If you liked what we're doing here, it does help us quite a bit. It doesn't cost you a thing, so we appreciate your support there as well. Don't forget about the Twitter and the Instagram, and in the after show, I'll show you the new portal where you can find ways to connect with, add yourself to these mailing lists, get on the replay and the live stream announcement list. So many things that are available. I'll give you an overview of that when we get to the after show. But we want to thank you for being here. It's always a challenge to get these study groups working the way they should be working. Today, it all worked perfectly. Thanks to you, and thanks for being here as well. We'll see you the next time on our Network Plus study group. Thanks, everybody. Okay. Let's now move to this part of the study group. There we go. Hi, everybody. So we got a lot going on here. We got a lot that's happened. So for those of you that weren't here yesterday, we didn't even come close to getting this far into the study group due to network problems. And as I was mentioning in the pre-show, for those of you that didn't catch it, if you were here yesterday, it was such a struggle. We were 40 minutes in, the system had gone down, and it just solid. It finally came back up after 40 minutes or so. We did not even get through the performance-based question. And just for fun, I kept the MTR running on my screen, and for the rest of the day, we didn't lose a packet. So it was just a bad timing is what that was. Let's talk about the after show. Since we're here, hello, everyone. Let's now get to the point where you can ask me questions. I'm going to grab information on the screen here so I can put those questions up so that we can all go through this list. Also, before we get to that, there are a number of folks I want to thank probably straight away. Let's thank Draconius in the chat room with the $99.99 super chat. Are you kidding me? Thank you, Draconius. That is remarkable. Thank you for the super chat. Draconius writes, "Hey, Professor, thanks for all the videos. Passed Security Plus in August. Got 2 jobs, 44, then 55,000 as a government contractor. Good luck with your escaped lab project." That's what we have here. This whole thing is suddenly out in the public now. It escaped the lab. Kevin must be old school. He's been with us for a while. So Kevin, congratulations on your Security Plus. Congratulations on the new positions. It's remarkable once you get in the door, the amount of upward mobility there is in IT. And that's all you need to do is get in the door. This is really the key. And this is a very good example of getting in the door. And you're, in this particular case, I also want to thank your generosity for the effectively $100 super chat, Draconius. We sure do appreciate that. As I mentioned, every penny goes back to keeping these lights on and keeping the whole process going. And we really could not do this without the support of you and other folks that are watching the stream. So thank you so much for that. And congratulations on earning that Security Plus certification, and perhaps more importantly, getting that foot in the door. It's going to be a crazy story when you look back in 20 years at all of the things that will have happened in your career. I know looking back on mine, there's things I never would have thought I would be able to do. There's places I would have never thought I would be able to go, all thanks to IT. Someone in this job paid me to fly all over the world and do amazing technology things. I would have done that for free. Don't tell them that. Don't let them know that. It was such a good time on some of these jobs that it really would have been that way. So that's something that we appreciate your support, and thank you so much for that very, very generous super chat. We sure appreciate it. Thanks so much. So in this part of the study group, I take your questions. The questions come from our YouTube chat. So if you are in the YouTube chat, then you can put in questions there. Some questions I'll probably not answer when you're asking me about specifics about physical attributes of myself, like how tall I am. I think we could probably skip over those. So maybe it's an ask me almost anything type of scenario, but you're welcome to put other questions in there too. You may notice I'm a little private with the things that we do here, and probably because it's the internet. Internet can be weird at times. So let's stay away from the weird part, and we'll keep it relatively professional, although we can talk about other things that you happen to do. There was a big football conversation that happened earlier where I got to say, I'm not really following it. So that was a short conversation. What I used to do, because this whole idea of writing content takes up a lot of time, what I used to do is just have a single set of things that I would say. Oh, the defense is going to be important for this game. They've had a bad year with injuries. We just say that. I don't know if they had a bad year with injuries or not. Everybody's had a bad year with injuries. So you just keep saying these things. The turnovers will kill you. The key to this game is going to be turnovers. See how that works? Now you got to wonder what those people on television, what do they do anyway? They say that kind of thing over and over again. Here's the keys I see for this game. We need a lot of offense. We need to limit the number of turnovers. And it's important that we are able to execute on third down. There you go. So that's the key. I just keep doing that over and over again. So we'll do those. This is probably a frequently asked question, so it's worth bringing up. Dean asks, "Hey, Prof, do you not have your own practice exam questions available for Network Plus? I used them for A+, and they were incredible." Well, thank you first for your support of the A+ questions. Do not currently have Network Plus questions ready for you yet. We are working on those. It's a slow go. It's a slow process to get books written. Normally this takes place over a number of months, and this is no exception. It takes a number of months to get these types of books written, and there's all kinds of other things going on behind the scenes to take up a little bit of time here and there, but I am slowly making my way through this set of questions. So as I like to say, my goal is to have something available for you in the coming months. What that could be, is it 2 months or is it 12 months? Well, we don't know. It'll just be the coming months. So I really don't have anything for you right now. I appreciate your interest. I see that you have an interest. A lot of you have an interest in this, and I am working hard to try to get something written that might help you when you finally get to the point where you're going to need practice exams. But in the meantime, you just don't have that flexibility. This is more of a practical question from Dennis, who asks, this is an English question from a foreigner guy who asks, a foreigner guy, loved your last album. What is the difference between contractor and employee? Well, if you ask some employers, there's no difference. It's the same thing. These two things are, there is a legal difference between these two. And perhaps more importantly, there's a very big difference in how our Internal Revenue Service in the United States, anyway, looks upon these two types of categorizations for somebody working a particular job. IRS, by the way, is the company that handles all the taxes. So whenever an organization has to pay things like unemployment tax, which is the money that goes into the pool that pays people when they're not able to work, employees, if you have employees that you have hired, then you have to pay into this unemployment tax. If you've hired somebody to simply perform a task for you, but they're not somebody who works full-time for you, you don't set their hours, you just give them things to do and they do that for you and they provide a service, that's a contractor. So take, for example, in Messer Studios, I've mentioned earlier, Lori is my marketing manager. She is an employee of Messer Studios. Sometimes you'll hear that referred to as a W-2 employee. That's the name of the tax form that designates that they work here. I set their hours. I tell them what their job requirements are. They argue with me and tell me that's not what they want to do. And then I say, okay. It's an easy negotiation. It's not that bad. No, Lori is an amazing marketing manager. She works through all the things we need to do. And we have great conversations about these things. But she is one who gets a salary, full-time pay. I set the hours and I say, here's the task that we need to do. And she's an employee of the company. And that also means that there are a number of things that I have to do from a taxing perspective. There's advantages that I can give from a 401k. Employees have a few more perks available than other folks. Let's take another example. I have a graphics person who does work for me, but I don't have enough graphics work that they would be a full-time employee of the company. So I hire them on a need-to-work basis. I have some graphics jobs I need to do. Can you do this for me? They turn it around in a couple weeks. They provide it back to me, and then I pay them a certain amount for providing that graphics work. And then I don't have them on my payroll after that. They're not part of the company. They're a contractor. And at a very broad description, that's the difference between a contractor and an employee. It's mostly a legal categorization of how different people are taxed and the responsibilities that I have as an employer towards those people. I mentioned earlier that sometimes those lines blur. There are some employers, and some of you may be this way. I've had people really have very strong arguments with me about this, that they were hired, their employer tells them when they need to work. They are have specific jobs that happen during certain times of the day. They have certain events and certain meetings they must attend, but the employer has categorized them as a contractor. Well, those two things obviously are very different than what I just told you. If you're categorized as a contractor, then there are certain legal aspects of this. In fact, most of the time, what really gets people angry is I tell them, well, that's because your employer doesn't want to pay their taxes. And so they've categorized you as a contractor to get around paying an employment tax. And some people take umbrage to that, but that's the truth. That's what's happening there. If you're setting your own hours, if you're not under the mandatory meeting requirements from a company, then you're probably a contractor. If you are instead being paid on a salary and you have to come in during a certain amount of time and you do have to attend those mandatory meetings, then you're an employee. So in the United States, at least, that's how we set that up and how it works through the different pieces. Hopefully that has muddled that particular piece. And I look forward to your cards and letters, by the way, for those of you that are really angry about me telling people they're trying to skirt their taxes. That's what the situation is. I pay a lot of taxes, so I want to be sure that everybody's paying their fair share of taxes too. If I have to do it, you have to do it. So maybe that's something we can always take up with our accountant. Always get a good accountant who will keep you on the straight and narrow. I never want to be in a situation where I'm worried about not taking care of taxes in a certain way. It's not a good position to be in, at least not in the United States. They don't take very kindly to that. Other questions. And certainly this is possible. You know, Drew says, I've been 1099, which is what the tax form is for a contractor. I've been 1099 my entire career, which if you have been paying your own way, you've been paying your own benefits, you're working your own schedule, you're not under the auspices of a company. Some people do spend their entire career being 1099. But as I mentioned, some people spend their entire career being a 1099, but the employer is not treating them as a contractor. That's where the problem shows up. That will eventually catch up with yourself and with the employer, because that can be a serious problem to the people looking for the unemployment tax. Here's a pretty good question. I guess we can discuss the ideas behind this. Is that Sean says, is it possible to make more than $100,000, 6 figures, after 3 years with just the A+, Network Plus, and Security Plus? Well, your question said, is it possible? Yes, it's possible. Is it probable? Probably not. But you could get pretty close. You know, we tend to think about moving from place to place or getting a job or a different kind of job. I've mentioned this before, in the 3-year plan is things that have come up. But I have seen and talked to people that have accelerated this process due to their own work and a little bit of luck, because both of these things go hand in hand, it seems. You tend to get more lucky when you prepare to be lucky. It's just sort of the way that this works out, the way that things happen. So if you really apply yourself, can you make $100,000 after 3 years? Absolutely. If you find the right niche, you spend your time learning the right things, and you're able to network and identify the type of roles that are bringing in a larger amount of money. If you're working in cloud, if you're doing things with virtualization, if you are really if you're doing a lot with data right now, those are very hot parts of IT, and people tend to pay a little bit better in those different areas. But I will tell you, without this 3-year thrown in, 6 figures in IT is not an unusual amount of money to make. It's not uncommon once you get up into the levels of a senior technician that you're making 6 figures. That's really, I don't want to say not that difficult, but that's a relatively common place to be relatively quickly in IT. But you have to apply yourself. You have to keep learning. Once you get the A+, Network Plus, and Security Plus, as we like to say in the MMO world, oh, you hit max level, you're just starting. That's just the beginning of the story. There's so much more to do. So you will always, throughout your career, see opportunities and find ways to learn more, and you should be learning more in your position. If you don't, then you're never going to get to that $100,000 mark. But in IT, one of the big reasons that I make these free courses, one of the big reasons that I have these free study groups, that I have my mailing list, that I do all of these things for no cost, is I believe there's a bigger, longer-term set of goals that you can set for yourself, but you need that first start. You need some way to get your foot in the door. You need some way to start the ball rolling, and I want to consider this as being a way to get the ball and momentum going in the right direction. And that's why I tell people, just get your foot in the door, because from there you can find many different things to do in IT with different advantages and disadvantages, different opportunities, different amounts of money that you can make, different levels of flexibility with your schedule. You get to decide what you want. I've said before in study groups that I'm very coin operated. I was very driven by the amount of money that I could possibly make in this career. And I think that's why I eventually found my way into systems engineering, working for manufacturers, and because that tended to pay pretty well. It was a very technical job. You had to know everything about particular products, but it did require a lot of travel. It required a lot of interactions with customers. There was a lot of work that had to go into place, and we had a quota, and you had to sell enough of the product to be able to make the top of your quota so that you can make those 6 figures. That's how it happens. One of the benefits, though, is if you go above your quota, you get into accelerators and you make even more money. There were times as a systems engineer where I did more than $200,000 in a year. So the money is there. The opportunities are there. The jobs are there. The flexibility exists. You just decide what mix of those you would like to have, and those jobs are absolutely out there. I feel that A+, Network+, and Security Plus starts the ball rolling. It's up to you from that point to figure out what direction you want to go and what things make the most sense. But it is extremely options to you. Just almost anything you can think of in IT, you can do that. You just need to apply yourself, find the technologies, learn the technologies, study at night. Keep studying. Never stop studying. If you're going home at night and you're not looking at some type of technical something for an hour, then you're probably losing a little bit of ground. It's hard to keep up. So find something and work that angle. So the real telling question, I sort of mentioned this earlier in the chat, sort of tongue-in-cheek, one of our standing rules at ProfessorMesser.com is there's no such thing as a layer 3 switch. That's because it's when you start talking about the OSI model, like we did during our performance-based question earlier in the study group, is that switches operate and make forwarding decisions at layer 2 of the OSI model. Routers make forwarding decisions at layer 3 or IP address of the OSI model. So switches don't make forwarding decisions based on an IP address. They don't. They're switches. Routers don't make forwarding decisions based on MAC addresses because they're routers. They look at IP addresses. But what some manufacturers have done is say, well, we could probably cram the capabilities of a switch and the capabilities of a router into one single chassis and just separate them inside of the software. And they did that, and they called it a layer 3 switch. Now, the switching part of that device still only operates at layer 2. The routing part of the device that also runs only operates at layer 3. So it's not really a layer 3 switch. It's really a layer 2 router, isn't it? Why isn't it? Because we're sort of just using these terms very, very loosely at this point. And that's the reason I tell you there's no such thing as a layer 3 switch, because switches don't operate at layer 3. They operate at layer 2. If you're somebody working on Network Plus, this is your first foray into this technology, and somebody says, what about layer 3 switches? And then you're like, what? I just studied OSI. Switches are at layer 2. They're not layer 3. So is a layer 3 switch a switch that operates at layer 3? No. It's not. It's just a device that has a switch and a router inside of it at the same time. That's the only difference. You could break that apart into two devices. You'd have a switch at layer 2 and a router at layer 3. All we're doing is sticking them together. And inside the software, you still have parts of it that are just a switch, and you still have parts of it that are just a router, and near the twain shall meet. We just gave it a bad name, is really what I mean when we say there's no such thing as a layer 3 switch. What I really mean to say is calling it a layer 3 switch is really a bad name. Thank you, marketing people at Cisco. I don't know that it was Cisco, quite honestly. Layer 3 switch, I want to say it was. Let's say it was just so we can say that it was Cisco. But it may not have been. It may have been, could have been Xylan back in the day. They were one of the very first companies making switches. So you never know. But I try to separate out, or at least make the difference so that people learning these technologies later on, when we talk about multi-layer switches, we really talk about how they're really just two things in one single box. Very similar to your firewall you have at home. You have a cable modem or a DSL modem. That's a layer 3 switch. What? That's not a layer 3 switch. It's a modem. Well, we call it a modem. Technically, it's a CSU-DSU with a router, a switch, a firewall. Probably has some type of content filtering inside of it. Might have QoS. That's a UTM, but we call it a modem. See, so whatever you call it doesn't necessarily mean what it is. And that's just another one of those things you have to think about in technology and the way it operates. Other questions. This is from Redax 101, who says, hey, Professor, I've taken and passed the A+ exam just recently, the Network Plus exam, from watching your videos. I'm very excited to start watching your Security Plus videos. Thank you for everything. You're very welcome. And congratulations on your A+. Congratulations on getting through the Network Plus. And now you're already working on the Security Plus. So sort of moved up to Security Plus. There's a lot to do. You should show up next week. On Wednesday, we have our Security Plus study group. What is my favorite MMO? Finally, the good questions from the chat room. We're not talking about technology. Let's talk about gaming for a moment. I have very little time to do anything with gaming. No, that may surprise you. But well, I do like to spend at least an hour or so at the end of the day, if possible, in some type of game, just to fill my day with something that is not IT or content related with technology. And where I'm now, my favorite right now, this is how I work, is right now, today, I'm doing a lot in EVE Online, but in the past, I've done a lot of Division and Division 2. I've done a lot of World of Warcraft. Others in my family have others that they prefer. And we talk MMO a lot at the dinner table. Oh, what are you doing? What's going on with that? Is this something new? Oh, there's a new update out, or there's a new expansion, and we go through the pieces of that. But right now, it's a lot of EVE Online. I'm doing a lot of ratting, trying to build up my skills. It's a mess. I'm not very good. I'm a huge mark. If you ever want to kill someone, I'm your man, because I'm just very bad at it, because I only spend an hour a night. I don't have the time. But I enjoy it. I enjoy being bad at these games. That's it. Don't do a lot of FPS type stuff anymore, because the kids, their response times are just so fast. They spend so much time on these games that I'm just a sitting duck. So I try to find something that I'm at least competitive with. Haven't found that yet. I haven't worked through the competitive part to figure out that piece, but that's my favorite MMO for now anyway. Finally, we've got those good questions to get through. What other ones do we have here? I'm going to flip through. I need to keep moving down the list, and there's a lot that have coming through. So let me see if I can figure out what we have here. Other questions. This is more of a, what are you doing with your spare time, and where is this stuff, and hurry up? From Gabriel. That was my translation of your question, which asks, any chance you'll show us CompTIA Linux Plus or other CompTIA categories? Well, there's always a chance. So what you're saying is there's a chance. There is a chance, and I have a list, as I mentioned in previous study groups. I have a list of what I want to do next. What's on my list of things I would like to produce, and there are a number of other courses I'd like to create. It's all about physics at this point. It's all about a time motion studying. Do I have enough time to be able to make those things happen, along with maintaining the A+, Network Plus, and Security Plus? The answer to that is yes, but I don't know exactly what that's going to be yet. Could be Linux Plus. Linux would be fun to do. I have found the Linux community is perhaps not the funnest to work with overall. So it's probably not highest on my list. But I think that's just sort of the internet in general. I shouldn't dwell on that piece of it. That would be a great one to do. Linux Plus would be fantastic to do. And I do tons of Linux administration. Why not apply that into a course that we're working on? But right now, I don't have an answer. Any chance? The answer is yes. Linux Plus probably not at the top of the list, but it is probably in the top number of lists. I also don't know if it will be a CompTIA Linux certification or a third-party Linux certification. We don't know yet. We'll have to figure that out. The only time I really know is when I start. Once I finally start the course, then I know for sure. And as soon as I know, you will know. So we'll figure it out. I know that's not a great answer, but that's the only one I got for you right now. Other questions. Let's see what we got. Got other folks in the chat room talking about what they're working through. This one's pretty good. Sort of speaks to some of the things that are in my video on getting an IT position with no experience. But Ali 2.0 says, I'm getting my CIS associate degree from a community college. It sounds like computer information systems. I want to be sure it's not cybersecurity. But getting a CIS associate degree in the United States, it's a 2-year degree from a community college. Our college offers Network Plus and Security Plus. What's the difference between getting a certification from a community college or from CompTIA? What this usually is at a community college is you sit in a class to learn all of the topics for the Network Plus, or you sit in a class to learn all the topics for Security Plus, and then at the end of the class, you have to go into a testing center and take the actual CompTIA certification exam. So ultimately, the getting the certification part is exactly the same The difference is, do you train yourself with your own books and your own time and the people you meet on the internet, or do you take the classes at your college and learn from the people that are in the classroom and then get your certification that way? Effectively the same thing. And in fact, many community colleges and universities are partners of CompTIA. They have testing centers at the university or the college itself. In fact, I go to a college often to take my exams because their testing facility is just beautiful. So it makes for a perfect testing environment. So that's another good thing to consider. Take a class where there's other students in the class. You can ask things of other people. You can immediately network with those folks. You can meet them after class in the library to go through different topics, to go through the things you need to learn for that week, something that you don't necessarily have the ability to do online. You have to kind of build your own community online or join one like our Discord to be able to do something like that. And even then, they're not in front of you. They're online, which also limits how you're able to get together on your particular schedule. But either way, at the end of it, you earn a Network Plus certification, and that certification is one that is provided to you by CompTIA. Other questions? We'll keep this going because, the internet's working. So we'll keep this thing happening. Folks in the chat room, oh, this makes me sad. Dennis saying, what's an MMO? What are you talking about? This is probably one of the largest areas of gaming, is the massive multiplayer online gaming system. So an example would be EVE Online. That's a massive multiplayer online system. We've got World of Warcraft. You've probably heard of that one. Another one, when you log in, there's hundreds of people around you that you can converse with and interact with and talk to. And so those types of games tend to be very popular because there's so much interaction. You're not just by yourself in a room doing something. You're working with other people to solve problems and to move forward in the game, which is a lot of fun. You meet some nice people on an MMO. If you've never been on an MMO, it's very social. It's a lot of fun. And it's something where you can really get a camaraderie of folks working towards similar goals, which is always fun. Other questions in the chat. Let's keep it going here. Things that are going through. Question comes up, and maybe we'll go back to the question about getting your certification at a college. This is from Michelle, who asks, should I go back to school for my master's in cybersecurity, or is getting Network Plus and Security Plus a good equivalent? Well, I will say, before we get into answering the question directly, I'll first say that a formal education provides a certain set of criteria and shows a certain level of capabilities that is different than an industry certification. I'll also tell you that an industry certification, very different than a formal education. These two things cover a different set of requirements from the perspective of an employer. And the other part of this is that they also work together. And you don't really use one to replace the other. You don't get a formal education to replace certificates, and you don't get certifications to replace a formal education. They are separate and very different. I have a video, it's in the YouTube video description of this video, called How to Get a Job in IT with No Experience. And that particular video describes what I call the 4 different elements for getting a job in IT that ideally you should have. The first one is a formal education, like a bachelor's or master's degree. The second is industry certifications. So these are not one or the other, it's both of them. You need both of these. The third is that you have some type of practical experience. And the fourth, you know somebody who works at the company you're trying to get a job at. So the case of, in this particular case, talking about going back to school is already a big thing. First, there's time and money. I mean, school is time and money. That's what that is. And the question is, and I'm assuming here because you would be going back for a master's, that you already have a bachelor's degree. The first thing I would recommend doing is looking at the entry-level IT positions in your particular area, or the ones that apply to your particular knowledge base, and find out what employers would like you to have. You may find that no employer is looking for a master's degree in cybersecurity. You may find that a lot of employers are looking for bachelor's degrees, and a lot of employers may be looking for certifications. So that might solve your problem. Or you might find that many employers would like you to have a master's degree in cybersecurity. And in that case, you might want to pursue that. But it depends on where you are in the world, in the country, because different areas, different geographies have different types of requirements. So that's why I tell people it's not one or the other, it's really both. But do you need a master's? You know, if somebody came to me and says, should I go get my PhD in cybersecurity? I would say no. I've never seen in the traditional IT environment somebody looking for a doctorate in cybersecurity. Are there jobs where a doctorate in cybersecurity would be important? There probably is. But I would bet they're not IT jobs. I bet they are higher learning positions and perhaps jobs where you are on the computer science side of things. But for IT, I'm talking very specifically about IT, you probably would not necessarily need a master's degree just to get that entry-level position. Now, later on, you might find in your career 10 years down the road that there's an opportunity to become a manager or a director of a particular group within IT that handles security. And that particular job might require a master's degree. And now you have to think about, should I have studied for that master's degree 10 years ago? Or do I go back to school now and get my degree 10 years from now? You need to make that decision yourself. And because there is time and money associated with this, everybody has a different idea of the importance of that. There's a different priority for everyone in figuring out what they want to do. So that's why I would say probably you may want to look around to see what employers would like to have. And you may want to look at some jobs that are director level for security in very large companies. Go look at Apple, go look at Google, go look at Facebook, go look at those companies to see what type of requirements are they hiring. And that's only an example because it's mostly Silicon Valley. Now look at organizations and companies in your area. Maybe you're in Dallas, so look at companies based in Dallas. Maybe you're in Minneapolis, look at companies based in Minneapolis or Chicago or New York or wherever you happen to be to see what types of things they like to see at that level. And then you can start making decisions because getting a master's degree of any kind is a significant amount of time out of your day. It's a significant amount of money out of your pocket. You want to be sure you are making a good decision about what you're doing and the investment you're making in yourself. And I would probably say the vast majority of technical people I worked with in IT had a bachelor's degree. Very few had a master's. And certainly at that time when I was there, it was not master's in cybersecurity because there were probably no, if any, masters in cybersecurity at that time. In fact, the term cybersecurity is a relatively new one in the world of IT, probably 10 to 15 years old, not very old at all. And in fact, it doesn't have a definition. What is cybersecurity? It has a different meaning for everyone. So you really have to even go overboard saying, well, what do you mean by cybersecurity? Let's go through that conversation. And then we really break down what it happens to be. For some people, cybersecurity is developing applications and looking through application code to identify security issues. All right, but that has nothing to do with IT. That's computer science. So it just depends on who you're asking and how cybersecurity, the term cybersecurity, would apply for them. So hopefully that is giving you some ideas of things you can do to make that decision. I can't make that one for you because that's some cash outlay if you're going to go get that master's degree. You really need to be very sure that that's a good move for you personally before you make that step, before you spend the time, before you spend the money. Other questions. Let's keep going. Oh, can't miss this. We've got a Mac fanatic, which is not me. That's someone else. It could be me. Who says, Professor Messer, just passed my Network Plus. Thank you. All caps. I wish I had a way to do fireworks on the screen. I'm using up all my layers, so I don't have a way to do fireworks. I would send them up, and we would look at the fireworks. Congratulations on your Network Plus, a Mac fanatic. That is great news, and I would love to hear where the next steps are for you. You can put that into the chat. We got the Network Plus. Now, do we go get Security Plus? Do we use that to get a network job? What is your goal with this? What's the next thing you'd like to be able to do? I'm interested. I want to know. Tell me more. Tell me more. Other questions. we'll come back to these to see if we can find the answer. I know I'm going very slowly through these. I apologize, but I like to spend time looking for the right answers, and then of course giving you the ones that we have. Let's see. Questions. Let's see what else we have here. I have a lot of folks that are checking in from other places in the world. Thank you so much for being here, by the way. We really would not be able to do this. Lee says, with triple CompTIA certs, will I be able to find an entry-level remote help desk job? Going to community college full-time, would like to work remote at night and weekend. That's a good idea. There's a few things that can help you along these lines. Certainly, whenever you talk entry-level, that speaks very specifically to the A+, Network Plus, and Security Plus. That starts the ball rolling. That gets your foot in the door. And when I was going to school, I had... It's kind of hard to call it an IT position, but I did. I was an operator for a mainframe, and I would monitor the printer and take printouts off of it. I'd monitor the plotter and take plots off of it. I would mount tapes in the tape drives when people needed to access the data they were storing behind the scenes. And it was on nights and it was weekends, and very often the holidays, because you were sort of low man on the totem pole. The fun part about the job, though, is it gave me time to study, because you're really just monitoring systems. You look up every now and then, is everything still running? Do I have any notices that I should be mounting a drive? Nope, we're good. Back to my studying. But you might be able to find having that part-time job while you're studying, while you're in school, gives you some practical experience. That was that third element I mentioned earlier about getting a job in IT with no experience, where you can tell people, oh, I used to work with these technologies. I've already been on a help desk. I've already worked through this part of it. In fact, you might be able to leap over that very first common entry-level job and maybe go working, doing something else. So is that possible? Is that reasonable? Absolutely reasonable, absolutely possible. And you should pursue that if that's something you'd like to do. If it's not something you can find to do, you have so much time available in college. There's a very different amount of time and responsibilities available. You might want to look at doing some projects. Put together an Active Directory infrastructure. Download an evaluation version of Microsoft Server. Install it. Learn it. Play around with it. Build your own Active Directory infrastructure like you were your own company. There's plenty of videos on YouTube that will take you step by step through this process. And start working with Active Directory. Or if you're more into the networking side and security, build a firewall. Put the firewall in. Create some firewall rules. Build out and have maybe an IPS built into it. Set up some reporting on that device. Those are great stories to tell a prospective employer of things you've done, and you've just done them in your apartment between classes on the weekends when nobody was watching. It's remarkable what you're able to do on a single laptop by yourself in the internet. You should be able to build a very respectable lab and have a lot of stories that you could tell a prospective employer if you get to the point where they say, why should we hire you for this job? And you can say, well, I've already been doing the job. Here's the things that I set up on my lab. And you can tell some great stories with that too. Other questions. Let's see what other things we might have here. What cert path would you consider the most natural to do after A+? That's an odd way to put that, I think. But I think I know what you're saying, which is, what do we do next? We've got our A+. Do we do Network Plus next? Well, that's what CompTIA says is a good next step. And certainly having networking knowledge is it's kind of a baseline, a foundation that you can apply to practically any IT position that you would ever find yourself in. And that's why I often tell people Network Plus is a good next step. But some people already know that they would like to go in a particular direction. Maybe you would like to do something with Linux. Well, maybe Linux Plus would be the best next step for you. Maybe you know that you want to do router and switch management. You want to be networking. You like the packets. You want to work at the packet level. So why don't you work towards Network Plus or CCNA? Or maybe you're looking at this and thinking, this cloud stuff is exciting. I want to learn how to automate the cloud. I want to learn how to make the cloud operate in a way that other people aren't using right now. Well, let's go get some cloud certifications. So it really depends on what your goals are and your objectives, and it might depend on what jobs are available in your area. And that's why if you watch that video I have on how to get a job in IT with no experience, I take you through a process of how do you know what employers want? Well, there's a whole lot of work we need to do. And I talk about creating a spreadsheet and putting this information in it. It's all in the video. It's an important part of this so that you know what other people in your area are looking for, and you can work that angle. You need to know what people are looking for so that you know where to put the right emphasis on these particular positions. Something you can think about as well. This is a weird one, sort of, because we don't know what it means. So here's the question. I know this is not about networking. Please, can you lead us a solid path to DevOps engineering for a non-IT person? So let's talk about DevOps. It is the amalgamation, the concatenation of two words, development and operations. Two things that, by the way, don't go together. So what do? We stuck them together, or at least we put the words together. In reality, DevOps is a non-defined, ill-defined, loosely defined combination of skills and tasks that people have tried to create to optimize their cloud-based infrastructures. The idea being, and this is how it's done in most places, is that you have a group of people in your company that are people that create applications. They are coders, they are programmers, they are computer scientists, for lack of a better term. But let's say if somebody's building an app, that they're a computer science person. But then there's another group of people that are responsible for keeping the network running, keeping the servers updated, keeping the data safe, making sure the networks are connected at the highest speeds, repairing any problems with those systems. Those are the information technology people, or IT. And in the world of the IT manager and management of companies, they have decided, we've got people developing that really are very good developers, but they're not very good at keeping systems running. And we got people who keep systems running, and they're not at all trained in development. Well, that's because development, building applications, is a remarkably complex science. We even call it computer science. That's how complex it is. You could spend your entire career trying to become well-versed in the intricacies of computer science, doing nothing else but programming. Then we have the IT side, where we spend our entire career learning how to keep systems running, learning how to maintain and protect data, learning how to keep the data center at the proper temperature. I mean, there's a lot of complexities around all these things. And our companies, now that we're in the cloud, have realized there's part of this technology where there's an automation part, there's a scripting part that kind of layers right on top of the cloud, because we're constantly changing things around in the cloud. We're moving where the data is, we're setting up new servers, we're tearing servers down again. These are generally automated processes that we automate on the back end. So wouldn't it be great if we took a programming person and we made them into someone who could work on an operational side of keeping these services running in a normal environment? And ideally, in the best possible world, if we could just wish it and make it so, that would work. What most organizations have found, however, is that people who do development are not very good at operations, and people who are very good at operations are not very good at development. So what this term DevOps has ultimately resulted in, generally, very broadly speaking, is a group of people who are very good at scripting who can help maintain your cloud-based infrastructure. Why? And I get it. Why don't we call them cloud scripters? That's why, right there. DevOps has a little bit better term to it. But DevOps is a misleading term that has no specific definition, that as soon as somebody says we're hiring someone for DevOps, your immediate response to that would be, what do you mean by DevOps? And you will get a different answer from every single person you ask, because every company has a different perspective of what that means to them. What also people have found is that you can't really take someone well-versed in programming and have them do something else, because they either then become a bad programmer or they become bad at this other thing you have them doing. There's a reason that application developers spend their entire career learning the nuances of programming, object-oriented, the details of creating well-oiled applications is because it's really, really, really hard to do. And you have got to spend 100% of your time doing that. Whereas on the other side, in IT, we work very hard at understanding operating systems and security and data and where information is flowing and the packets and the protection of that data. Well, we spend our entire careers learning those technologies and we still don't know everything. It's the same scenario. We would make very bad programmers because if we were asked to program, we would not have the time or the ability to keep up to date with that. So that's where I always tell people, whenever you get into these scenarios where somebody says DevOps, 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 the first thing you should do is say, hold on, define what you mean. Because they could mean we want better programmers. Well, that's just all a computer science thing. It has nothing to do with IT. Or they might say, we're really trying to optimize our flexibility in the cloud. We need somebody who's very good at doing scripting. We need somebody who's very good at PowerShell, someone who's very good at Python. You know, that's, to some other people, that's DevOps. So there's not a good answer to this. I don't really know what the right answer is for the scenario that you may find yourself in, but the first thing I'd ask you to do is have them define what they mean when they say DevOps, and that might help you too. Since other folks are saying, yes, we should answer this one, we'll go through this next question that comes in. I'll have this one here. So, the top of the line. Is artificial intelligence going to replace cybersecurity professionals? Yeah, no, it's not. No, this takes me back sort of, when was the year on this thing I'm trying to think of? Because this does have, so if we go back to the date of, when was this, 2022? No, it's before that, right? Here we go. So 2018, let's go back to 2018. In 2018, before that, let's keep going back further, 12 years ago, let's go to the very first generation of this technology. Apple stood up and said, guess what, everybody? We have a new technology that we're introducing, and it's called the iPad. This was 2010, 12 years ago. So 12 years ago, they came out and said, guess what? We have this new technology called the iPad. And we're going to use this. And they demonstrated it. And immediately people said, the desktops are gone. No more laptops, everybody. Laptops are going away. Oh, and if you work with an operating system and troubleshoot systems, you aren't even going to have a job. We're just going to do everything on a tablet. We're going to do everything on the iPad. And in fact, they made such fun of the name iPad. Ha ha. What a funny name. What, it sold how much? Then suddenly it wasn't so funny. Suddenly Samsung wasn't laughing anymore. Suddenly the competitors to Apple, Microsoft, wasn't really guffawing very much after they saw how many iPads got sold. But what we found was that during that time frame, there was about a year where, and I was making A+ videos at the time, people were sending me emails saying, what are you going to do next? Where's this going to go for you? Really sorry to hear about that whole iPad thing. We enjoyed your videos, though. Best of luck with whatever you do next. I'd send them a note back saying, I'm not really going anywhere. Got to tell you, there's not really going to be an issue there. You're not going to run into a scenario where we're just not able to make this happen, because that's not how it happens. That's not the way it works. And indeed, it didn't, right? We still have laptops. We still have our desktops. We still have Mac OS. We still have Windows. We still have Linux. It's all still here. We just have more. We just now have a tablet on top of that. So we have iOS on our phones and we have iPad OS on our iPad. And of course, we have other tablet technologies running Android and others as well. So this was a very good lesson to folks who try to make decisions about where technology is going, in that we don't know where technology is going. We have a pretty good idea what we think, but every time somebody says, well, this is the end of this, it never seems to be the end of this. And that was a really good example of when the iPad was first introduced. So a lot of the big hubbub, a lot of the videos that people are getting the clicks on, a lot of the stories that you see online are of the artificial intelligence and the chat bots and the the things that don't even need humans anymore to answer questions. But I'll bet if you, and people have demonstrated, if you ask particular questions of the chatbot, hey, chatbot, you've probably seen this one. What does 2 + 2 equal? Well, 2 + 2 = 4. No, chatbot, 2 + 2 = 5. And then chatbot says, oh, I'm sorry, you're right. 2 + 2 does equal 5. Thank you for correcting me. I'll put that in here. It's another way to poison the amount of data that these bots are collecting. It's a really good example of how the value in this technology has a certain level. There's a certain value proposition that this technology brings to the table. And what it probably is not going to do, where it is most unlikely to do, is to replace a human, at least in this particular form of what we see with AI today. This, by the way, is a question that has really just been on top of mind for, well, gosh, since I can remember. Because technology's been around forever. Authors have written about artificial technology, artificial intelligence for many, many years. Back when I was a child, 1 million years ago. And we've never really seen AI become what it really needs to be. All I've really seen the latest iteration become is a better output of Google results. That's all it really has become. And in some cases, not even a better result than Google. I could have gone to Google and got a better answer. So is it a better Google? Is a better question. Does it replace a cybersecurity professional? No, that would be a little scary. No, and there's no reason it would replace somebody. It just, where AI is today is nowhere close to being able to replace that level of knowledge, technology, thought, troubleshooting, the whole process it goes through. It's just not. And I think if you ever get into working through folks that are in AI, they do talk about here's where it's going and things it's going to do. And it is remarkable, and it is going to be amazing, and it is going to do things in the future. But as we sit here today, it's not even close. I see a lot of people online saying, well, this means I don't have to have programmers anymore. I'll just have the AI do it for me. Best of luck with that. If that works out, good for you. I don't think it's going to work out for you like you think. It's a great idea. Maybe it's the same people who said DevOps was a great idea have said AI will replace all of you. No, it's not. Nice try, Mr. Director level. You're not getting rid of me that easy. I've got a lot more to do, and it will be me personally. What it does speak to, I think, and I will provide this as a really emphasis if those of you listening are wondering, then what do I do next to fight this animal, to fight this idea that AI is going to take over the world? Because there are people at those levels who want this to happen. They're going to try it. I would probably tell you to be better. Be better at these technologies. And I would say start your efforts at learning everything you can learn about Python and learning everything you can learn about PowerShell. Those should be kind of the next steps for you. After A+, Network+, and Security+, let's layer that on top of it. Because as soon as you learn how to automate, as soon as you learn how to take something very easy, plain, that happens over and over again, and you're able to automate that where a human doesn't have to be there anymore, that's a valuable skill. And in fact, is a skill that you will continue to learn throughout your entire career. You will use this skill forever. It may be that PowerShell is not going to be around for 50 years. It may be that Python won't be around for 50 years, but something will, whatever the next thing will. And by learning Python and by learning PowerShell, you already learn the basic skills that you can then apply to almost any scripting language. So that's why I tell people that's what you should do, is don't worry so much about the machine taking your job and stealing your family and pushing you out of the car at a high rate of speed and leaving you by the side of the road. Instead, you can point and laugh at it and then be better than the AI, which I think most of us can easily do. The examples that I've seen from the latest iterations of AI online is probably not any concerning at all. It's most of the time they're wrong. There's lots of examples of that. AI will get better. It probably won't be as good as us for a very, very, very long time, probably not in your lifetime. So not something you necessarily have to worry about. We'll address that in the next generation and see if those folks are at a level with AI that actually makes a difference. But the human mind is a remarkably complex machine. It's going to be extremely difficult to come close to that. But I think if you can work on your IT skills, your foundational skills, learn about scripting and automation, you're going to be way ahead of the game. Then you'll be at your 6 figures that you asked about earlier, that someone asked about earlier, so that we can be at that level and be able to work through the things that make the most sense. Well, it brings us to the top of the hour. I think it's probably a good place to start. I want to thank everyone for being here. Thank you so much for your very generous super chats. Thank you for your very generous use of your time for the very first hour. We went through Q&A all the way through, and we even made it through the second hour, by the way, at 3%. We're good. We finally made it, everybody. We got through an entire study group without that outage. I want to thank you for being here, especially since we had to reschedule and you had to change your schedule up. Thank you so much for attending. We really could not do this without you. Look forward to doing it again next month. Check the calendar for the next live event. We'd like to see you next week on our Security Plus study group, and the week after that, or the 2 weeks after that, we'll do A+, Network Plus, and Security Plus all over again. We love doing these live streams, and we love it when you're here. Keep checking the website. We got plenty of new things happening. We, of course, as I mentioned before we go, I do want to show you the website. Let me turn off a couple things here and move over a page of the site, because I promised you out on professormesser.com. I mentioned to you that we've got some new things for Security Plus. If I had the right screen here, there we go. So out on the website, under the Network Plus, there's a Start Here option. I've also got that linked into my Network Plus options on the main page. You can simply click the Network Plus picture or the link underneath that says Start Here. It's a great place to go, where we have everything on one page for you. All of our free study materials are here, including our study group replays and a way to sign up for notifications, our chat on Discord, our weekly pop quiz. You can sign up from the links that are there. We've got our success bundles and course notes. So our premium products are there. I mentioned the vouchers that you will eventually need, and you can save a few bucks there. And then the CompTIA training bundles are there, along with some frequently asked questions, like how long does it take to take the Network Plus exam to study and be ready for it? When does this exam retire? Can I use study materials from a previous version? They're all there under the frequently asked questions. They're all on the Professor Messer website. Have a look. We appreciate you being here. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next time on the Network Plus Study Group. Thanks, everybody.